The slap echoed across the concrete like a gunshot. It wasn't just sound. It was the kind of moment that froze time, made even the birds on the power line stop moving. The old man's coffee cup hit the ground, splattering what little warmth he had left onto the sidewalk. The cop stood over him, breathing heavy, his gloved hand still half raised as if even he couldn't believe what he'd just done. But the disbelief didn't last long, because at that exact moment the rumble of motorcycle engines cut through the silence and 5 men in black leather vests turned the corner. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a salt and pepper beard and the word Hell's Angels stitched over his chest, slowed his steps when he saw what was happening. His name was Reed Callahan, and he wasn't the kind of man who looked away when someone was wronged, especially not someone who couldn't fight back. If you believe kindness still has a place in this world and that strength means standing up for the weak, then please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your small act of support helped spread stories that remind the world what humanity looks like. Reed's boots echoed against the pavement as he walked toward the station, his men following close behind. The officer, his badge reading M. Reynolds, straightened, trying to compose himself. The homeless man, frail and trembling, sat against the blue wall of the police station, his gray beard soaked with tears and coffee. His name tag on a worn jacket said, Frank. He had once been a mechanic, a father, a man with a small home and a bigger heart. But now all he had was the concrete under him and a cup that no one wanted to fill. The officer's shout had been loud enough for everyone inside to hear, and a few officers were now stepping out from the glass doors, squinting into the sunlight. Reed's stride didn't falter. His eyes, gray, steady, and stormy, were fixed on the scene ahead. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't yelling. He was just coming. And the kind of calm he carried was more dangerous than any rage. Behind him, 4 other bikers, moved in sync. Clay, the quiet one with a shaved head and tattoos creeping up his neck. Walker, tall and broad, with a vest faded from years on the road. And the twins, Kurt and Mason, both ex-Marines who'd found brotherhood again in chrome and leather. Reynolds turned to face them, his jaw tight. "Move along, fellas," he said, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his nerves. The station doors opened wider. 2 more officers stepped out, watching closely, but Reed didn't move along. He stopped right at the edge of the curb where Frank sat and crouched beside the old men. Without saying a word, he took off his gloves, pulled out a folded handkerchief from his back pocket, and began wiping the dirt and blood from Frank's cheek. The world around them seemed to hold its breath. Even Reynolds froze. Reed then reached into his vest and pulled out a crumpled $20 bill, tucking it gently into Frank's jacket pocket. Then, finally, he looked up right into the officer's eyes. It wasn't rage that filled Reed's stare. It was disappointment. The kind that cuts deeper than anger ever could. "That uniform's supposed to protect people," he said quietly, voice low but firm. "Not break them." Reynolds took a step back, muttering something under his breath, but his words vanished in the roar of one of the motorcycles starting up behind Reed. The sound wasn't a threat. It was punctuation, the growl of justice waking up. One of the other officers near the door whispered to another, "Is that RLCCHLS? The biker from the Veterans Outreach thing last year?" The murmur spread. Suddenly, the power dynamic shifted. The men in leather weren't faceless rebels anymore. They were decorated veterans, charity riders, community protectors. Reed stood up slowly, towering over Reynolds. "You ever been hungry, officer?" he asked, voice rough but calm. "Ever slept in the rain? Ever watched people walk by like you weren't even real?" Reynolds didn't answer, his face pale now. Reed took a step closer. That man has. And the fact that you wear a badge doesn't give you the right to forget that. Behind him, Frank tried to stand but stumbled. Walker moved quickly, helping him to his feet. Frank's lips trembled. "Thank you," he whispered, but Reed just nodded. He wasn't looking for thanks. He was looking for something else. Something that had been missing from too many uniforms and too many hearts. An older officer stepped out from the station, eyes wide with disbelief. "What's going on here?" he asked. But before anyone could answer, Reed turned his head slightly, meeting his gaze. "One of your own forgot what it means to serve," he said. "Maybe remind him." The older man looked down, his expression heavy. He knew what that meant. The tension hung thick in the air. Then, one by one, the other officers began to step back. The younger cop, Reynolds, shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the ground. The slap that had started everything now echoed in his head, a sound he couldn't escape. Reed didn't yell. He didn't push. He simply turned, gave a small nod to his brothers, and started walking back toward his bike. The rest followed, boots thudding softly against the pavement. Before mounting his Harley, Reed paused and looked back. "We all got choices, officer," he said over his shoulder. "You made yours. Make the next one better." With that, he put on his gloves, started the engine, and rolled out slowly, the deep rumble of 5 motorcycles fading into the distance like thunder after a storm. Inside the station, silence lingered. No one moved. The old man, Frank, was now sitting on a bench near the entrance, a blanket around his shoulders that one of the officers, silently ashamed, had brought out for him. Reynolds stood off to the side, staring at his hands. The red mark from his own slap had faded, but the guilt would not. That night, as the sun set over the quiet town, the security footage from the station made its way online. A cop slapping a homeless man and 5 bikers stepping in. But what went viral wasn't the confrontation. It was the compassion. It was the image of a tattooed biker kneeling beside a forgotten man, cleaning his wounds without a word. By morning, the internet was flooded with messages. "Not all heroes wear badges." "Respect to the Hells Angels who stood up for what's right." Donations poured in for Frank. The police department issued an apology. Officer Reynolds was suspended. But most importantly, people started talking about kindness, about accountability, about the fact that real strength doesn't come from authority, but from empathy. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner because every story you share helps remind someone that kindness is never weakness. It's power in its purest form. Before we end, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were Red that day? Sometimes the smallest act of courage can silence the loudest injustice. And on that quiet street outside the station, 5 bikers proved that the heart of a man can roar louder than any engine.